Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
My goal today is really to take a closer look at GED Manager. You might have joined one of my previous sessions on GED Manager and online proctor testing in the past. So if you have, this might be just a really nice refresher to reset for the next term. And if you haven't, welcome. If this is new, just know that your questions, whether you're old hat or new to this, are always welcome. What I would also share with you is if any time you would like me to join a consortium or program meeting or schedule something one-on-one, I'm always available to any of you or your staff to take a deeper look at how you can get the most out of GED Manager. I know for many of you, the initial motivation is to manage your vouchers, et cetera. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But I also want to make sure that you know that there are so many other resources within GED Manager to help you and your students. So we'll talk about all those different things within the next hour, hour and a half. Everyone here is eligible to access GED Manager through what we commonly refer to as Prep Connect. That is our branded name for the student authorized view. And so we're going to take a look at how students opt in to share their information and data with you and your program locally. And there's lots of different pathways to make that happen, but also some of the benefits around managing student enrollments once they do opt in. And then also the reporting functionality within GED Manager that you and your programs can take advantage of. You'll know on the agenda, I didn't specifically call out vouchers, but when we get to that test activity report page, we'll be talking a little bit more about that. So just to briefly acknowledge and mention, GED Manager is our data management tool for a variety of users, depending on what their needs are within a given state. And so there are folks in the state that have a jurisdiction access. For example, your state staff at TWC do have jurisdiction view access, which allows them to see all students. And yet at the local level, you don't need to see every student in the state. It's a big state. You need to zero in on your students. And so the role that we've created within GED Manager is, like I said, that student authorized view. We also refer to that as Prep Connect. So you'll see me sort of use those terms interchangeably. And then for some of you, if you support a local jail, you may have staff who have what we can call the corrections role. And that gives you access specifically to those testers at a facility and who are incarcerated. We're not going to talk about that today. We're really zeroing in on that student authorized view. But I did just want to take a minute to acknowledge that GED Manager has multiple roles to meet various needs within the state, depending on what you do to support GED testers. Before we get to what you can do with GED Manager, I think it's really important to kind of talk about how students share their information with you. And we consider that a student opt-in pathway, because one of the most common questions I get from new users is, I have my account, I was looking for a student and I can't find them. Why can't I find my students? And the answer is almost always without question that they didn't opt in to share that with you, whether they knew to do it and chose not to, or they didn't know how to do that. And they might need some guidance from you to be able to make that decision and go into their student account and link their account with your access in GED Manager, so that you can have that ability to look at their testing. So starting from the beginning, when a student creates their account at GED.com, whether it's a student that's already enrolled in your program or a potential student, somebody out there in Texas, it knows they need to quote unquote get their GED, right? We know that they're going to earn their text chase. In their mind, they're thinking about GED. They don't know you exist. They Google GED and they find our website. They land at GED.com and they decide to create a new account. When they do that, they're going to share first, last name, their personal information around date of birth, etc., email address, physical address, those kinds of things. And at some point, they're going to see this screen that asks them if they would like help with the GED, if they would like to attend a GED class, if you will. And it just briefly highlights some of the benefits of attending a class to prepare for GED. And as long as they say yes, and then hit continue, they're then going to be directed to what we call a site locator page. Looks something like this. You'll notice right off the bat, this is the Philadelphia area. So this isn't Texas per se, but it's going to pre-populate with the zip code they entered as their address and give them all the local programs that could assist them with preparing for the GED in their vicinity. Now, they might decide that it's more convenient for them to find a class closer to work than it is closer to home or some other search criteria, and they're more than welcome to enter that into the box as well. We just defaulted to the zip code that they enter when they share their address with us. When they do that, it provides a list of the closest programs or classes in their area, and they can select any one of these. Now, you might be wondering what that gold star represents, and we use that gold star to tell that student that's a grant-funded program in Texas, and we know that Texas offers subsidized testing, so that gold star is to say, hey, this is a program where you might be able to test for free, or at least some testing for free, depending on qualifications, and you might want to choose that program to help you prepare for the GED. That's really what that gold star is intended to do, to highlight that they may want to choose your program over another program in the area where they may not have the benefit of free testing or discounted testing in some way. Once they select a program, they'll see this screen. It provides the details of the program they selected. Okay. And if they selected one, they're like, oh, wait, that's not what I intended. They can remove that selection and select something else, another program in their area. They can also come back to this at a later date. This is how they would opt out, is when they go to edit this information, they would remove the selection and either make a different selection or no selection at all. That's their right to opt in and out of that kind of support. But until they do that, you will not see your students. Even if you can see that student in front of you in the classroom and you look at them up in Data Manager and you're not seeing them, it's because they did not connect their account to your program in their student account on this screen. So what happens once they've created their account? There's lots of different ways where they can edit or change this information. We know it's not uncommon for students to either change their mind or need a different program if they were to move. So there's lots of different ways that they can edit it. We're going to talk about the profile page first. This is really important because this also gives you an insight into where that student enters their team's ID and what that looks like as well. So here's their profile page. Once they click on the profile icon in the top right-hand corner of their student account, they're presented with this page. And you can see where it says state requested information. This is where their team's ID would be located if they were to have entered it. If they didn't, they can certainly click on edit state information. Anything in blue on our website is considered a hyperlink where they can edit the information by clicking on it. So they would click on that link and update their team's ID. The second arrow is what we're talking about specifically right now. That is to identify their GED test prep center. If it's blank or it's not yours, they can go in and click this hyperlink and it would take them back to those web pages I've shown you, the site locator where they would enter in the zip code, etc. they'd find your program, select it, and once they do, you're able to see their data in your GED Manager account. If they were to log into their account, they can also edit their connection to your program through the study page. Once they select the study and come to the page that looks something like this with 4 tablets in front of them, they can click the Find GED Classes button, and again, it would take them back to that site locator page. They can also share through the scores page. So this is their navigation, if you will, on their homepage at the top. You see, if they were to click the study button, it would take them back to those 4 tiles or tablets I showed you. But if they click My Scores, it's going to bring them to this page where they have a summary of scores or no scores if they haven't taken the test. And they can click Share My Scores, Find GED Classes. And again, it would bring them back to that site locator page. And I mentioned that profile icon. That's what this looks like over here in the right-hand corner. Then if they were to click on a subject for those scores, again, this is just the very beginning of a score report page. They can click Share My Scores, Find GED Classes here. Remember, it's in blue, so that's a hyperlink. And if they were to click that, it would, again, take them back to that site locator page where they can edit their information around a prep program and consent to sharing their data with you through that site locator. So there's multiple pathways. To keep it simple, I generally suggest that if they don't have the guidance to make that selection when they create the account, then to just click on their profile and click on that Edit Prep Center Information link and just keep it simple that way. But again, there's multiple pathways to assist them depending on what's sort of intuitive to them as the user. Now, assuming that they have selected your program, let's talk about how you see their data and the reporting functions available to you in GED Manager.
So, Jonna, we do have a question from Karen. Would you like to go ahead and address it now, or do you want me to hold on to it?
No, let's do that now.
Okay, so Karen asked, how do we make sure our program is on that list without having to set up an account?
So without having to set up an account, what I would do is let me know. And Karen, I think you're at Arlington ISD if I had to guess, because I recognize the name. And so I'm more than happy to check on that for you. And we always want to make sure we have current information. We know that sometimes programs move and their addresses change. So it's a challenge to keep our site locator updated. I'm gonna be honest, I'm going to rely on each of you to help me with that. But I would also encourage you to have an account because, and hopefully that will become more clear in the next few minutes, it's one thing for them to be able to link to your prep program and to find you. But once they've linked, if you don't have an account, you're kind of flying blind on all of those different things. So hopefully you'll find out in the next 10 or 15 minutes that it is of value to you to also have an account in GED Manager so you can find them. Okay. So once you do that, and you have an account with us on GED Manager, again, your Prep Connect access, then your dashboard or homepage will have these 2 pieces of information. Now, I've copied and pasted certain pieces of it because the dashboard's quite big, but we really want to zero in on these resources for you. On the left, you're going to see that you have a box where it gives you a total number of students who have expressed interest. And then you have a number for enrolled. And I'm just going to take a minute to explain that. So in that number of expressed students, this may be students who found our website before they found your program. And they said, yep, I want help preparing for the GED and I want this program to do that. When one of your staff logs in and they see that number, they're going to have the ability to reach out to that student and bring them in next time you're enrolling students, whether it's open enrollment or managed enrollment, whatever that might be, to let them know, hey, come on in on this date and time. We'd be happy to sort of give you an orientation and enroll you if you're still interested. Or, hey, this is how you enroll with our program, etc. The enrolled number are those students that have said, yes, I need help, and that somebody on your team has changed from interested to enrolled once that enrollment has been confirmed. For our purposes at GED, we can only tell you who's interested. We have no way of knowing if they went from interested to enrolled. So we don't make those changes on our end. That's a management feature for you when you have a GED Manager account. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. On the right-hand side, you have all kinds of links. You have helpful links for more information on our website, and you have useful documents that you can click and download a PDF and keep that handy. It gives you step-by-step directions on how to do any number of things that we're going to talk about today around managing your enrollment, creating reports, printing reports, those kinds of things. And so all of that is handy for you on your homepage where you can click and have access to that information. By all means, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime, but we wanted to make it as self-serve as possible so you wouldn't have to wait on our availability to get back to you with those kinds of questions. But this is the kind of thing that I love the most, so never hesitate to reach out. Closer look at that homepage. As I mentioned, you have the interested students and enrolled students on your left, and all of the kinds of helpful links and documents on the right. And if we were to look at how you're able to manage your students, there's a couple of different things we're going to talk about. I think we're going to talk about managing your Prep Connect enrollment first, because that is a unique feature of this particular role that no other role has the ability to do. And so what that means is that you can click on that aggregate number on your dashboard, or you can go to the Manage Student drop-down menu and select Manage GED Prep Connect Enrollment. When you do, you're going to see a list of students who have said, yep, we're interested in help from this program. And you have the ability to export this information, to sort based on different criteria, whether it's a date range or enrollment status, those kinds of things that are specific for you. And you would do that by clicking the edit button in the action column. And when you do that, you have a pop-up that allows you to change their status from interested to contacted, dismissed, or enrolled, and to write notes about that student. So that's what this looks like. Again, you would click the edit button under the action column. This box here is a scrolling menu of the various status available. And then it's up to you to decide if you want to use the notes box to leave notes. So if one or more staff are managing your list of interested students, you might leave notes for each other so that if I were to contact Johnny and say, hey, our next orientation is Friday at 7 o'clock, and I texted and emailed them that, Johnny, that information, I might make a note of that here with my initials to let any of my other colleagues know I've already reached out to that student versus another student who we still need to reach out to bring them in. This is a feature we built into it because we really feel strongly that we wanted to maintain our partnership with you and bring students into you and support your enrollments, but also support that student who's like, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how to get ready for that test. It's been years since I've been in school, et cetera. I need some help. We can connect that student with you all, the experts, in providing that instructional support so they get ready for that test. And we can provide, a small part in supporting better outcomes for your programs, for the student, and for the state. So that is available to you here. And then once you've entered a note, then there's an icon in that Manage Prep Connect Enrollment page where anyone in your program can hover over the icon and see any previous comments that were entered for that student or regarding that student.
Shauna, we have a couple of questions. Do we want to address before we move forward?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. And Pilar asked, who determines the order in which the programs appear on that list?
So I'm going to assume you're talking about the site locator page. And that is really based on proximity. So we don't do any prioritization ourselves, but it is a Google search engine support, and it's based on proximity given the zip code or address that they entered into that box.
And then from Jennifer, how do we even get a GED Manager login?
So there's a couple of them, and I actually included a slide so we can revisit that later. But just to ease your mind now, we do have a request form on our website. You're welcome to apply through that request form. If we have a data agreement on file for your program, then we'll send the request to the approver, the designated approver for that program, to ensure that you're approved for access. If we do not have an agreement, then it's up to me to reach out to that program director and request a data agreement. Once it's signed, then we can work with them to identify staff that they want to approve for access. The other piece, second to that, since I am involved in that piece of it, for some programs, it's easier just to email me and say, hey, can I, and they provide me with the list of teachers or staff that they want to have access. And we can kind of do that in one lump sum rather than individual request forms. There are many, many programs in the state that do have a data agreement on file, in which case my operations team would take that request form and email the approver for that program to confirm that the staff person requesting access is approved by the local approver, and then they would receive an email with login credentials as a result of that approval.
So Jennifer's asking, where is that form?
You can go to the educators and admins page on GED.com, and on the left-hand margin, you should see something that says GED Manager and Prep Connect. And when you click on that, somewhere, if you scroll down about halfway, you'll see a link to request access. So just some tips for outreach to interested students. And this really is based on feedback from the field, whether it's from Texas or another state. We have a lot of different programs all across the country that have been using GED Manager for many, many years. And so this slide really was based on feedback that I've received from your colleagues all over the country, okay? So one is to make sure you update the status of your students in your program, to really go in there and say, okay, this student was interested, but I know they're enrolled. And you switch that status from interested to enrolled. Another one is that many of our successful programs who really actively use this feature to boost their enrollment have a designated staff person, whether that's an administrative assistant or a lead teacher or a data analyst. It really depends on the size of your program and the role and responsibility of your staff. But successful programs tell me over and over again, they have designated staff who monitor that Prep Connect enrollment page for interested students. And one of their responsibilities is to ensure that they reach out to those students who are not currently enrolled, or maybe have been enrolled in the past, but maybe, the status wasn't updated timely, to bring in those students. And by doing so, they've been able to fill their sites, if not at capacity pre-pandemic, then very near capacity. So it really is something that can help boost your enrollments, and it is a free resource. You do not have to spend your marketing dollars or outreach dollars on flyers, recruitment events, etc. It's your staff time really that you're allocating to managing this list of interested students. And to not be afraid to call or email them. They have shared their contact information for a reason. They want your help. They've opted into your program. They're oftentimes hoping to hear from you. And if they don't hear from you, they may or may not know what to do next. So don't hesitate to reach out to them, because they've already said, yes, I want your help. And then we do have many, many programs who use various resources like remind.com or something similar to help streamline that outreach, so that they can put in the contact information for a group of students and send one message out, in bulk, if you will, and reach that many more students with very little time and energy. It's not like an individual text or phone call every time that could be time consuming for folks to make time for. A reporting feature that you have access to when you have this account is the student test activity report. Frankly, it's probably my favorite page, because you can use a number of filters to get a lot of different information. So this particular page allows you to run reports based on test activity. If you are qualifying students based on a GED Ready practice test score, you can filter their test activity for GED Ready specifically to identify those students who are scoring in the green zone, which we would consider a passing score on the GED test. That would be predictive of success on the operational test that leads to their text chase. Or perhaps, you've been working with students and you want to find out who's not ready. Then you can also, filter that test activity for your reds and yellows as well, and identify those students who may need more help than those who are green or pretty close to green to get ready for the test, and make some program and instructional decisions how to best support your students in that part as well. Additionally, if they've taken the test, that test activity filter includes the operational test too. So you can filter for GED passed or GED below passing. You can make sure you have students who have scheduled their appointments even, because it has that kind of filter for testing activity specific for appointments that have been scheduled, but maybe the test hasn't been taken yet. So looking at that, that's what this page looks like. On the left-hand side, this text activity filter, that's what I've been talking about, because it does give you lots of opportunity to filter your students. And then you can filter by subject. So if it's a specific subject that you're interested in, you're certainly able to do that. I always recommend that you at least put in a date range, which can be, for a day, a week, a month, a semester, an academic year, a calendar year, whatever date range you want to put in here from and to. All right. And then I would be remiss if I didn't point out this green arrow is pointing down to OnView. OnView is the technical name for the platform that our online proctored testing or testing at home option is offered on. So when you go onto this page and you want to see who's testing at home, that's what this filter does for you. You're going to look for OnView, not OP or online proctored, and you can leave it blank, or the selection is either yes, no, or blank. And that way you can filter out your OP tests and only look at those who have tested at a test center, or you can filter specifically for those students who tested at home. It's really your choice. And for those of you who are deeply involved in managing your vouchers, whether for a GED Ready test or the operational test, you can enter your voucher code here in this green box on the left. And if that voucher has been used, even to schedule a test, then whoever redeemed or used that voucher, to schedule a test or take that test will appear down below. If you enter a voucher code and no one shows up, one of two things have happened. Either it was used by a student who hasn't opted in to share their data with you, in which case you wouldn't know necessarily, or that voucher hasn't been used at all. So you can see how it's critically important for your students who are going to take GED. If you're giving them a voucher, they really do need to opt in order for you to see that information in GED Manager. And then there's the passers report page. This will allow you to run only the passers over a certain time period. So it allows you to put in a date range and then you get a list of passers. Now, I will say if they've taken, once you generate that list, if that student took 4 tests, then every test score will show up on an individual line. So it might be helpful if you're using this for some information to export it to Excel and then remove your duplicate line. So you get just the testers themselves, but it just depends on how you're using that information. The student search page, which is under the Manage Student menu here in the middle of your blue ribbon, allows you to look up one student at a time if you need to find some specific information. And then once you put in their first and last name, and it appears down below, you can click on their name to bring up their student detail. And this is where you will find more information about whether or not they've accurately entered their team's ID and their scores. I love the score report because it allows me as an instructor to link the curriculum that I am using with that student with their score report. Why would I want to do that? Because once I do that, it gives me an individualized study checklist. So if that student is not excelling, perhaps I'm using a GED Ready practice test score report. If they're not ready to take the operational test, then this can give me a study checklist to give them some idea what to, where to focus their time and energy using the curriculum that I've already chosen with them that they're already familiar with. And many of you use more than one publisher or curriculum resource. There's nothing stopping you from linking to study material here, printing the school report. And if you're using more than one resource, change it and print that score report too. And each score report will have an individualized checklist based on that study material that you've selected. And you can print this in English or Spanish as well. So this is the checklist. If it's a computer-based curriculum, then you're going to get the lesson titles. Underneath it is the skill that they need to sort of focus on, perhaps need some remediation, if you will. And they can achieve that by spending some time on this particular lesson. If it's a paper-based resource, because we do have both computer and paper-based resources included in our engine for the score report, then it would give a chapter title and page numbers related to that particular printed material as well in this study checklist. Questions about the score report?
From Suzanne, are we able to extract the individual's GED certificate from GED Manager once they pass the official GED test, or can this only be obtained at textchase.com?
This is, we do not issue the certificate. So great question. Yes, that can only be received through TextChase. Cindy, you might want to elaborate a little bit more, but they will get their certificate from TEA and duplicates from the TextChase website as well, but we do not provide that through our website. So going back to the question we had a few minutes ago about how to request access, this is the link to the access form online. And then this is my email address. You're welcome to email me. If you have a data agreement on file, I'm more than happy to add staff and activate staff if you've had some staff turnover, et cetera. It's always pretty handy for you to just send me a list via email and the team will get, to work creating access for them. I will say if you have not accessed GED Manager in the last 6 months and you had an account previously, then your account is inactive. It just goes inactive after 6 months of no login activity. And if you are still active at that program, we're more than happy to reactivate your account. Just email me or use, again, that access form online, and the operations team will handle that for you as well. A few words about OP. I will say I'm pleasantly surprised because, frankly, I know many, if not most, of our test centers are not at full capacity like they were 2 or 3 years ago pre-pandemic, right? They've reduced their seat capacity to allow for social distancing and for safe testing indoors, given that this pandemic continues on, variants sort of rearing its head every now and then. And so shortly after the shutdown occurred, we were able to develop an alternate solution for testing. We commonly refer to it as OP. OP stands for Online Proctor Testing. As I mentioned, the technical name for that platform is OnView. And if you log on to GED Manager, that's what you're going to see for the filter. But there are some policy differences between testing at home and testing at a test center. When you test at home, that test is proctored virtually. And so there are some significant policy differences, really, first and foremost, not to penalize the tester, but to ensure that we have the most secure experience in that test delivery to maintain that option. So there are inherent risks related to test security when we allow things like handheld calculators and dry erase boards, et cetera, that can be managed at a test center because the test administrator is in the room managing that test appointment. That is a little trickier when that test administrator is virtual and kind of looking through the webcam view. So a few things that we have cultivated over time that we think is helpful for you to know in order to help your students make the most of an OP test, whether or not it's the best solution for them. And one is to let them know that the option is available to them and that they can find all the information they need about this option under the About the Test tab or web page at GED.com. We also have this information available to them if they were to log into their own student account at GED.com. And we highly recommend that students practice using the digital whiteboard tool, and for that matter, the digital calculator tool before testing, so they can become as comfortable with it as possible, because they are not going to be allowed to have whiteboards, scratch paper, pens, pencils, handheld calculators when they test at home. Whereas if they went to a test center, they would still have access to a handheld calculator or dry erase board. And then we really want them to complete the online system check before they schedule on the computer, whether it's a laptop or desktop, that they plan to take that OP test on. Doesn't do any good to take the system check on a laptop if they're going to use, the desktop in the study on test day, because that system check really is designed to ensure that their hardware, their internet access, their webcam, etc., is all up to the task. And if it isn't, then they get that information before they schedule. So we'll make sure that they do that. It allows us to eliminate disappointment to the best of our ability on test day when they go to check in and they don't have adequate hardware or internet access for a successful appointment. And then that appointment either doesn't happen or ends prematurely because the technology let them down. And then we also want them to know that the content on the OP test is the same content they've seen when testing in person. We do have separate forms. Again, this is about test security. So we have a set of forms that they see at the test center and another set that they see when they test at home. And that allows us to ensure that both options, whether they go to a test center or they test at home, remain as safe and secure as possible. This is what it looks like when they go to GED.com for more information. In the About the Test menu, I believe it's still the last option. It's the online testing option. There is also a brief video that gives them an overview of the OP testing solution and the rules that are in place, as well as more details as they scroll down that webpage around OP testing, what's allowed, what's not allowed, etc. Some common questions, that kind of information. When they log into their student account, if they have a GED Ready practice test of 145 or above, that's a green zone GED Ready practice test, then they are presented with the option to schedule an OP test, and they can click on either icon for more information. If they haven't taken a GED Ready practice test and scored in the green zone within the last 60 days, they will not see the option to test at home. OP testing does require a green zone score on the GED Ready practice test in order to schedule, and that's by subject. So each subject requires that score. As they scroll down, there's some brief information. And again, if they have not taken GED Ready, they can purchase it and take it. If they have a voucher for it, then if they were to click on this button, there's a place where they can enter that voucher code. They can also get more information about OP testing, or they can schedule at a test center because we do not have a practice test requirement at the test center. Some things to keep in mind when testing at home: you have to be 16 years or older, and at 16 years, 16 and 17-year-olds are still subject to the age exception, and that is still processed by text chase in every case, pretty much, unless it's a incarcerated youth situation. Again, within the last 60 days, they do need to have a GED Ready score in the green zone within 60 days of when the test is going to be scheduled, not the scheduled test date. We do have English or Spanish available, and almost every accommodation is supported by OP now. Our accommodations team really went to work to ensure that there is a way to provide for those accommodations. So pretty much everything, every accommodation available at a test center is also available on OP. There's a note on their file so that the proctor who's administering that test virtually knows that that tester has an accommodation and sort of, manages that test appointment according to those accommodations that have been approved. So that link again is the same one that I've put in the chat, and I think Laura had shared a couple different times.
So I do have a question from Suzanne. Can they take part of the test OP and part face-to-face?
So yes, absolutely. There's nothing that requires them to take all 4 tests at home or at the test center. They can take whichever subjects they want on the OP platform and the rest at the test center. And that's very common. One of the factors in that is really, appointment availability. On OP, it's a global platform. So there are test appointments available almost 24 hours a day. And I would say at least 6, if not 7 days a week. So you can imagine the flexibility that allows the tester, who can avoid, missing school or missing work and take a test outside of those other obligations. There's also some flexibility in being able to check into their appointment, to reschedule their appointment. So for example, if they were to schedule a test and something happened to prevent them from taking that test, as long as they canceled or rescheduled that appointment up to 30 minutes before test time, they can do so. Whereas if they were to test at a test center, they would have to take care of that 24 hours in advance. They can check in up to 30 minutes prior to their test appointment and up to 15 minutes after their test appointment before they're considered late. If it's 16 minutes past their scheduled appointment time, they're going to be considered late, and that's a no-show, and their test won't launch. But they do have that 45-minute period of time to check in and take the test. For some students, they don't have to request an accommodation to test in a private room because, OP inherently is on your own in a private room. And we're going to talk about some of those additional policies, but there cannot be anyone else in the room while they are testing. So it gives them, a little bit of space in that respect as well, where they don't have to filter out outside noises or distractions of people coming and going, and they're testing in a familiar setting as well. So I just wanted to share some links. All of this is available on our website, but just for your convenience, highly recommend that students are aware of and use our tutorials that are available on our website for the calculator and the whiteboard, and would encourage you to find a way when your students are going to take the GED test to just pull this into the lesson or the practice that they're doing in the classroom, so it becomes somewhat intuitive and it's not a surprise to them when they do take their test. And then last year we had a couple of sessions, online proctor GED test part 1 and 2. And I put this slide in because with some timestamps, because it is a rather lengthy recording, it's almost 2 hours, but I went in and timestamped certain pieces that I thought might be of particular interest so that you wouldn't have to necessarily listen and wait for that piece of information, that little, golden nugget. You're certainly encouraged and welcome to listen to the entire thing. But if you're specifically looking on tips on how to use that whiteboard for the ER, or how to use the highlighter tool to that student's advantage, et cetera, our PD consultants go into detail around those kinds of tips and resources. And so I've timestamped that recording for your benefit. That whiteboard can be a little intimidating if you're looking at a rectangle on the screen until you realize that you can move it and create additional white space, et cetera. And suddenly you have endless support if you know how to use it. So feel free to use all of that. And then slightly misplaced, but I just wanted to, again, revisit some of the rules that are different for OP compared to computer-based testing, but just to an overview again of those exam rules. Cheating is strictly prohibited. We are very eager to ensure that everyone who wants to test on OP has access to OP testing across the country. And so we work really hard to ensure that anyone who's trying to cheat the system is found out and dealt with accordingly. So again, strictly prohibited, probably goes without saying. And then students consent to being videotaped and recorded. They do have to be in a private walled room with a closed door. No one is permitted in the room once the exam has started for any reason. You may not leave your work area for any reason. If they were to leave, we call it leaving webcam view. Their test will end as soon as the proctor cannot see them in front of the computer taking their test for any reason. So they need to go to the bathroom before they start their test, and they need to complete their task before they get up and walk away. They can't use a calculator, scratch paper, take physical notes, or talk during testing. And there's no personal items. A mobile phone or cell phone may be necessary for the proctor to reach out to them if all other attempts through the computer fail, but that phone has to be out of reach and only, used in the event that the proctor calls. And if it's a proctor calling, they're going to give them a heads up. Food, drink, smoking, gum are prohibited, and breaking any of these rules will result in what we call an exam revoke or a session revoke. And it's really unfortunate when those things happen because we want every student to be successful. And sometimes if you break a rule and your session is revoked prematurely, you haven't been able to demonstrate all those skills and, taking that next step to achieve your text tape. So it's really unfortunate when it happens, but it does happen. They lose the fee that they paid. So we really want to ensure that every tester has a really positive experience. Watch the video, read the policy and rules very closely. They acknowledge all of those rules and requirements before the test launches. We've done everything we can think of to prevent this from happening, but it does happen more often than we would like to see. I think I see a question about reading aloud, but I missed part of it. Beth, can you help me out there?
Yeah, we actually have a couple of questions. I'm going to start with that one, and then I'll make sure Norma and Louise that I get yours. So Larissa's question is about students talking. What about students reading aloud to themselves? That she has students question about talking when they're simply whispering aloud when they were reading.
Right. So we need to coach our students not to read aloud when they're taking the test on OP. It is a security risk because we're not in the room with them. We can't tell an innocent whisperer from one who's trying to record questions. And so we have to apply the same rule to all testers. They will be warned, but if they continue to read out loud, then the test will end prematurely. So we really want to coach and mentor our students to find another way to process that information without whispering or reading the test out loud, because we have to apply the same expectation of all testers.
And this one may require we go back a couple of slides from Norma. Where is the calculator whiteboard tutorial located?
Yes. So thank you for asking. And I have those links here. So, and I don't know if I'm in this mode, if you can copy those from the screen necessarily, but the other option is to go to GED.com, your educator and admin page. And on the left-hand side, there is free resources to help you. And there's another page. I might need to get it because I'm not on the website, obviously, right now. There is a page that provides all of these tutorials. These specific links are also available in that link that we've provided a couple times in chat specifically for OP. So another way to find it would be to go about the test, select online testing from that drop-down menu. And then as you scroll down about maybe midway on the right-hand side, there's some tools and resources where all these links are included as well. You just have to scroll down a little bit further.
And then we had a question, what is the cost of each test taking at home? And Cindy has provided a link for us to TEA, and Randy has piped in $42.25 each for an online test.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that link, Cindy. And yes, Randy is also correct. OP testing is a little bit more than testing at a test center. The other thing that they should know is that when you test at test center, if unfortunately a student doesn't pass on the first attempt and they need to retest, then of course there's a discount when you test at a test center. When you test online on our OP solution, it's the full price every time. There's no discounts. And it really just goes to, it's a different platform and it's expensive to make sure it's available. So we just wanted to keep the price as low as we possibly could, so that it remains available. And that means that we are not also able to offer a discount on retakes.
We have a question. What if someone accidentally walks in the room while the person is testing?
Yes, it's unfortunate. it does happen. Hopefully, we have testers who live alone and it's never an issue. And we have testers who live with families and have family members around, right? So hopefully they're well informed. A note on their door saying do not enter is helpful. This is one of those areas where it could end up in a very unfortunate outcome. If it is a child looking for mom or dad, that is different from an adult. And if that child opens a room, the tester never leaves their webcam view, and they say, something to the effect, and I hate to say this, but sometimes we're in a rush, so we're not always the kindest, right? But you need to leave, get out, whatever it is. Child closes the door behind them. That's vastly different from having someone walk in the room and help somebody cheat on the test. And that's about as far as I can go with that. Ideally, we're going to make sure that children have an adult in the house where they can get their needs met, and the door can be locked, or a sign on the door, do not disturb, that kind of thing, because we really need to encourage our testers to do everything they can to ensure that those oopsies never happen, because it could really have an adverse effect on the outcome of their test. Which is why OP isn't necessarily the best solution for everybody, but it is an alternate solution to testing at a test center.
And then the last question we have right now is, what is the discount when they retest at a center?
So at a test center, the fee, I believe, and I would go back to the link that Cindy included in the chat, but I believe the retest is, I want to say it's $16.25, because there is a test center reimbursement and then the state fee that is charged on every attempt.
And then we have a comment from Randy that we provide a room on our campus for OP testing.
Yes, there are some programs who have been able to do that quite successfully. There are other programs who have tried and have run up against technical issues when their students went to test. And keep in mind that if you're able to do it and it helps your students maintain access because maybe they just don't have the technology at home, it's really amazing that you can do that. But OP was really designed for at home. So it doesn't have the same ability that the Pearson View system does at a test center to work with firewalls at facilities, campuses, that kind of thing. So it can present some technical issues, but if you're able to do it successfully, it's a really great alternative for your students. So moving forward a little bit, you'll note here I put drinks are allowed. We highly discourage it. So we generally advise against it. But if they have a need for a clear glass of water during testing, their test isn't going to end prematurely if they do, but we do discourage it. And I just wanted to restate some basic policy differences. We've talked about these things already for the most part. I will say that if a student is testing at a test center, they have 3 attempts before the 60-day wait period on a 4th, 5th, or 6th attempt comes into place in the same calendar year. So again, there would be a 60-day wait period for the 4th, between the 3rd and 4th attempt. The 5th attempt would be available, and then the 6th attempt. On OP testing, we only have 2 unique forms on OP testing, so they get 2 attempts on OP before they have to wait the 60-day waits for additional attempts. And they can flip back and forth between OP and CBT testing as well. There's a little bit of difference there for the retakes. And Cindy already mentioned this, but underage testers are required to have a valid photo ID. It must be government issued. Student IDs are not accepted. And a parent or legal guardian needs to be present with a valid photo ID as well for OP testing. And then I'll just open it to any final questions. And I believe, yep, there's my contact information for anyone who doesn't have it yet.
All right, we have a question from Frida. After the 60 days, do they have to pay the full amount again, or will this be considered retake and they pay retake price?
So after the 60 days on that 4th attempt, it is full price again on the test center. And keep in mind, every attempt on OP is full price. There's no discount on OP. Other questions, thoughts?
Hi, Jonna. It's Fabiana with TWC AEL.
Yes.
But in terms of opting in, that student, when they opt in to share their information, we are to just make sure when we send the voucher codes to the grant recipients, exactly which program that student should be selecting in order to share that. We just want to make sure that the vouchers are able to be kind of tracked by our AEL grant recipients. So we'll be very clear when we send that. The vouchers, just add that little piece of instruction there so there's no confusion as to maybe some of our larger consortiums where there's several providers on that list, where they might be able to ensure that, those vouchers are easily tracked by the grant recipient.
Mary has a question about underage testing requirements.
Thank you, guys. We have a student that had guardian approve and get approved for them to take the GED test. So why does the parent need to actually be there for the test? Because if they go to a testing center, the parent doesn't have to be there.
Right. So this might be a question for me, Cindy, because initially when OP first became available, we weren't able to create access to underage testers. And it really has to do with the law and legal protection of minors. And based on advice of our counsel, the way that we were able to create access for underage testers on OP was to ensure that parent or legal guardian was available to consent on camera on the OP platform. And beyond that, I'm not an attorney. I don't even pretend to try to explain it beyond that, why that's the case for OP and not CBT testing. But in order for us to allow underage testers on OP, this is the way we were able to do that.
All right. And then we have something from Jeff. Just thinking, what happens with a 17-year-old who's no longer living with parents? Maybe they're living independently already. What happens at the test site in that situation?
Yeah, so the parent guardian consent is provided prior to the test being scheduled. So if it's a live test center test, well, our help desk ticketing system allows for multiple things. It allows the parent or guardian to go in for the 17-year-old and say, I approve my child to take the test. It allows for a parent or the courts for a 16 or 17-year-old to provide consent with a court order. There is also a form on our webpage that is for the McKinney-Bento Act, which does allow for a 17-year-old to get this document notarized, stating that they are no longer under a parent or guardian. As far as OP testing goes, Jonna, I don't think there is an exception made for those individuals to allow them to take the OP test because of the requirements for the check-in process.
Right. Because OP does require that parent or legal guardian.
Okay, another question. Do past sections of the test expire?
They do not. As long as that test was taken 2014 forward, those test scores are still valid.
I want to thank everyone for your participation this afternoon, for being here, and Jonna and the TWC team and Cindy for coming on to support us here and answer our questions. And we very much appreciate it. And thank you for your presentation as well as your support.
Thanks, Beth. I will just pitch one more idea out to folks if it's helpful. If you feel like you haven't touched GED Manager in a while, this was a great introduction. But if you'd like to schedule some time where we can talk in a small group or one-on-one, feel free to reach out to me with that as well. I'm happy to make myself available to you. And thanks to everybody for joining.